guys, and welcome back to Constant Review, where we're finally talking about something that we haven't talked about for a long time, and I know a lot of you have just been annoyed at me and unsubscribing because I haven't come back to it, and that is Game of Thrones. Because I've been steadily waiting here on the channel for something to happen, and it's finally happened, which is the release of House of the Dragon. And with the release of House of the Dragon comes only one important question, which is the show going to be what Game of Thrones was, or is it going to be what Game of Thrones ended up being? And that's what we're going to look at in this episode of Constant Review. So me and most of the rest of the internet are not usually typically shy about telling people exactly what we think about what happened to the writing towards the end of Game of Thrones. And with the release of a bunch of new fantasy series in the last couple years, including Lord of the Rings' Rings of Power and The Witcher Season 2, all I have to say is that fantasy and television has not been going so well. It's been a lot of overarching political agendas and a lot of losing what we really cared about and loved in these shows. And now we have House of the Dragon. And immediately this show kind of pulls at the heartstrings and brings back those feelings of early Game of Thrones as we see a nice flying overhead shot of King's Landing. And that's King's Landing before it was destroyed in the episode that made us all kind of want to throw up. And I'm not gonna lie, the main reason to why I haven't posted a video about House of the Dragon yet is mostly because I've been very careful to have an opinion on this show too early. At this point, I feel like I've been slighted too many times by Hollywood, and it feels like despite many shows coming off very strong in the first episode or having weird feelings about not finding their footing right away, sometimes they just leave you extremely disappointed. And so I kind of waited until now in order to really voice my opinions of House of the Dragon. And the first thing I have to say is, my god, did they really focus on one of the most important aspects of Game of Thrones, and that is the political intrigue. All the characters in Game of Thrones, especially in the earlier seasons, kind of resemble the characters we see in House of the Dragon, in so that they're all very complicated. They have their own desires, they have their own wants and needs, and sometimes those wants and needs are at ends with other characters. No one is really good or evil in this show. They're just simply going after what's in their own best interest. And it makes their motives very easy to figure out and makes their plot lines make a lot of sense. Not to mention the most interesting character of House of the Dragon so far, which is definitely Otto Hightower. Now, Otto Hightower appears to be taking over the role of Littlefinger from Game of Thrones, except he's a little bit more visible and we're getting a lot more viewing into how his plans work out very early on. While most of the characters in House of the Dragon so far have been above board, usually stating what their intentions are very clearly and being very polite about everything they want,
join our families. Wed our daughter Lena. Unite the two great surviving Valyrian houses.
Did everything I've given you, you've thrown back in my face!
You've only ever tried to send me away to the Vale, to the City Watch. Anywhere but by your side.
Otto Hightower is definitely not one of them. He is definitely coming from that Littlefinger mentality of manipulation, steadily sowing the seeds for getting everything he wants, regardless of the cost of the realm. I feel like I shouldn't need to point out that having his daughter marry the king is really, really bad for the realm. In a time where all marriages are political and all marriages are done in order to secure the foundation and alliances that keep the realm stable, the king marrying Alicent Hightower is just really, really dangerous for the overall safety of the realm, and basically something that shouldn't be ever done. And we have the character of Otto Hightower just running around doing many things in order to seemingly gain more power for himself. In fact, over the first 3 episodes of House of the Dragon, we've actually just seen the only reasons to why Viserys has been mad at his brother Daemon is because of the things that Otto Hightower has told him.
He toasted Prince Balon,
The king's son.
styling him the heir for a day.
And as a weird note, none of these things have been actually shown on camera as things Daemon has actually done. Now, he probably did do them, but the fact that all this information is coming through the filter of Otto Hightower, who definitely has his own agenda, is really assuring that Otto is doing everything he can to split up these two brothers and drive a wedge between them in order to obtain his own power over the realm, while definitely putting the realm at the brink of civil war. Which brings us to exactly how the series is playing out. Because Viserys, and by extension Rhaenyra, keep doing things that are in their own self-interest, for example marrying out of love, they keep putting the realm in more and more dubious position, which is inevitably putting the entire system closer to civil war. And with the return of dragons, violence, nudity, and all that good stuff that we used to love Game of Thrones for, they seem to have actually paid attention to the things that drove me crazy about the ending of the original series. And the thing that I fixate on the most is one of my more popular videos. If you haven't seen it, you should go check it out. But it's my video on the Battle of the Bastards, the episode that killed Game of Thrones. And this was a very controversial video where, besides the fact that I maintain that it was a good overall episode of television, it set up way too many things that kind of destroyed what Game of Thrones used to be. The number one example of that being plot armor, where characters in Game of Thrones don't have plot armor, and if they go into situations where they should die, then death should be inevitable. And episode 3 of House of the Dragon goes straight back to exactly that, and does exactly the things that I've really wanted to see in Game of Thrones. I don't think I'm alone in saying that a lot of fans were thoroughly pissed off at things that happened in the last couple episodes of the original series. For example, when Daenerys was flying around on a dragon and not a single archer even thought of aiming at the rider on top of the dragon instead of the dragon itself. And yet this happens almost immediately in House of the Dragon. And the other big issue from Battle of the Bastards, of course, being the fact that Jon should have really been hit by an arrow, if not many arrows. And we have the same kind of prelude in House of the Dragon, where it looks like Daemon is also not going to be hit by a single arrow. Until he does, because he's surrounded by archers, and of course this makes sense. He barely escapes and finds cover, barely saving his life as he has to basically crawl away for safety. And after just thinking about Battle of the Bastards and all the amount of times characters have suffered from extreme plot armor before, seeing this happen just made me feel so relieved, as if something finally makes sense in the universe of Game of Thrones. Now, I'm not gonna lie, there were still issues I found with House of the Dragon. The number one being that in Game of Thrones, they mentioned over and over again that dragon fire is hot enough to melt stone. Which means the idea that the crab feeder and his associated army were able to hide in caves from dragon fire doesn't exactly make sense, because the dragon fire itself should have been hot enough to just melt the stone walls and basically seal them into the cave forever. But, you know, overall that's a pretty small thing, and if Arya is allowed to survive by hiding behind small stone walls, I guess the crab feeder should also be able to. Not that I'm happy about that, really. But I gotta say, with all the attention that's going into House of the Dragon to seemingly fix the things that ruined the ending of Game of Thrones, I have to say, it does feel like that Game of Thrones is finally back. And I, for one, am thrilled to watch where the series ends up going. They've really recaptured the original George R.R. Martin feel of Game of Thrones, and hopefully without certain people forgetting certain key things about characters, we're going to be in for a much better series. But guys, this is just my first thoughts on looking at House of the Dragon. Let me know what you guys think of the series so far, and what theory videos you might want from me in the future, because I'm going to be spitting them out of the show because I think I'm in love with it. Anyways guys, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!